The State Department has announced major plans to restructure the agency in a move Secretary of State Marco Rubio says is meant to make the State Department great again. Rubio called the department bloated, bureaucratic, and unable to perform its essential diplomatic mission. The move comes after the Trump administration dismantled USAID and imposed sweeping tariffs on major U.S. allies, causing some to question the administration's commitment to diplomacy. Joining us to discuss, Laura Kelly, foreign policy reporter here at The Hill. Hi, Laura. Let's take a listen to this press conference that happened this afternoon with the department spokesperson, Tammy Bruce.
Over the past 15 years, the department's footprint has had unprecedented growth and costs have soared. But far from seeing a return to investment, taxpayers have seen less effective and less efficient diplomacy. The sprawling bureaucracy created a system more beholden to radical political ideology than advancing America's core national interests.
So, Laura, you listened to that press conference and have seen this new organizational chart that was released. What do you think are the biggest changes coming to the State Department?
Sure. Immediately, we see the largest cut was focused on the bureau under the Undersecretary for Civilian Security, Democracy, and Human Rights. And that had about 7 offices underneath it. It's now been changed to the Office of the Coordinator for Foreign Assistance and Humanitarian Affairs. And there's only 2 offices underneath it now. So this is an Assistant Secretary for Democracy, Human Rights, and Religious Freedom, and Assistant Secretary for Population, Refugees, and Migration. And what was lost under some of those were the Office of Global Criminal Justice and some other bureaus, but it's unclear if they were moved into other bureaus or eliminated completely.
Yeah, that's the major takeaway that I took from watching that press conference with the spokesperson, Tammy Bruce. Her kind of framing was that to questions about these, kind of social programs that are implemented around the world, was that these are being folded under other agencies, and it's not the administration deprioritizing them, as some have suggested.
Right, but any cuts are going to affect operations, but it is a matter of whether they really are going to say that they've cut a lot of fat and that they've eliminated maybe unnecessary levels of bureaucracy so that they can have a quicker, more nimble reaction time on some of these issues, but that remains to be seen.
Sounds like there's going to be a lot to be seen in the implementation of all this. Considering what happened at USAID and other government agencies, is there maybe some relief among State Department employees that maybe this could have been worse?
I think it's kind of just like the opening shot, more like death by 1,000 cuts. I mean, this is the State Department employees. Not only have they dealt with the elimination of USAID and done in such a kind of cold and all-encompassing manner and very, very brutal. I mean, you had assistant acting undersecretary for management Tibor Nagy. So he was most recently helping with the State Department's reorganization under the Trump administration and just recently left. He wrote an op-ed and he called the destruction of USAID was like watching a tragicomedy with the Twilight Zone, and that the tragic part was that it could have been done much better and the people impacted didn't have to be treated so badly. Now, Nagy has left the Trump administration at this point, but the American Foreign Services Association, which is the union for State Department employees, posted on social media that even the leaks and the confusion surrounding the reorganization of the State Department was a recipe for failure, leading to a demoralized workforce and weakening U.S. diplomacy. So I don't think there's any real sighs of relief at this point that maybe people's careers and their work is being preserved, more like still holding their breath for what is going to be like the major blow.
And one more question before I let you go. What are you going to be watching for in the next weeks and months to kind of give you an indication of what exactly this reorganization means going forward?
Well, it's going to be interesting to see what are kind of the long-term effects and how does it impact U.S. operations, U.S. relationships. A lot of this kind of uh, less of a focus on human rights and democracy in some countries around the world, those countries might welcome this because they have felt cooperation with the US was sometimes stymied over this focus on human rights or democracy. And we see that, presidents of both parties have interacted with countries with poor human rights records when it advances national security interests. Look at U.S. relations with Turkey, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, large criticisms against U.S. relations with Israel. What there's concern about is that if the U.S. stops tracking human rights abuses or is not clear-eyed about the level of corruption or political oppression in some of these countries, it undercuts our long-term goals. So maybe we might be able to do some short-term deals and get some kind of benefit in the short term, but what does it mean for the long term? And that's going to be hard to kind of suss out and follow.
All right, Laura Kelly on the major shakeup at the State Department. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.